We've got four more teams in this division, so the final four here will move on to the Nashville Predators in the fifth spot, who have gotten themselves back into the race. It's been an up-and-down season for the Preds, 50 points in 46 games so far this season for Nashville. Case, your grade for the Preds.
This team is an enigma. I do not understand what is happening with this team. And analytically, they make no sense at all. Saros, they're completely riding him to this position in the standings right now. But the confusion lies within the expected goals and expected goals against. So they've been incredibly unlucky at minus 20.15 goals above expected for second last in the league. And then they've been incredibly lucky with minus 26 goals against above expected for first in the league. That is just baffling to read those two stats. Like, they've been incredibly lucky for the puck not going in their net and incredibly lucky for, or vice versa. You know what I mean?
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, so that's unbelievable. They're third in save percentage. Again, riding Saros once again, having an incredible year. And then this team just has no depth scoring, no scoring in general. A lot of guys kind of regressing compared to last year. Not terribly. They're still around a point per game, but not having the seasons they had last year. They have poor special teams and just kind of bad analytics across the board. So this team does not make a lot of sense to me. Therefore, I have them as a C- because they're low in the standings. Lower than I had them at the beginning of the year, and I think that they've been very lucky to be this high up, which is bad to say when they're fourth last in the Central, but C- for the Nashville Predators.
Yeah, I agree with you, Case. I think they are pretty lucky to be where they are in the standings right now. I gave them a C, so just one grade better than you did, but it's kind of the same old story with this team, right? Like, they're not quite good enough to be a real force in the playoffs anymore, but they're not quite bad enough to tank. So, I mentioned to you guys last week that I want to do an episode where we talk about some of the teams in the middle of the league who maybe should rebuild and what their first moves or their first string of moves should be. And I think Nashville should definitely be in that conversation, despite having some players who are still having some good years. Like UC Saros, of course, is number one on that list. But, dating back to the preseason when we talked about this team, one point kept coming up, and that was the idea of regression from some of their top players. Last season they had players like Forsberg, Yossi, Duchesne, Tanner Jeannot, and some others who are all having I don't know if they were all career years, but very good years. The first three players that I just mentioned were all above a point per game at the end of the year last year. But this season, they don't have a single one who is above a point per game. So they're just not getting the same kind of offense that they were last year. They're 27th in goals for, and they have the 28th best power play in the NHL right now, which is just not good enough for a team who's trying to make the playoffs. So I don't know if it's, like you mentioned, Case, a lot of unluckiness. I don't know if it is a combination of unluckiness with just regressing a bit to what these players probably should have been after big seasons last year, or what exactly it is. But things aren't going right in Nashville right now, and it seems like if they didn't have an all-star Vezina caliber goalie in UC Saros, they would probably be tanking right now. And I don't know that it's a good thing that they're still in the conversation when this is the deepest year we've seen from a draft in a long time, with Connor Bedard headlining it. So for that reason, I've given them a C. I think, if they were going to keep this roster together and compete, it would have been nicer to see them a bit higher up in the standings at this point. But the fact of the matter is they're sitting in fifth and will likely not make the playoffs, and also not get a very high draft pick. So that's a C from me.
All right, yeah, and talking about the Nashville Predators, hockey is cruel. The NHL is cruel because I think that this team had a very small window to win, and they missed it. They made it to the Stanley Cup Finals in 2017, as we remember, and lost to the Pittsburgh Penguins. And that may have been their only shot. It looks like it. I think that, 2-3 years down the road here, maybe even sooner, this team is going to have to look at a rebuild or retool or whatever. And, some of the roster decisions really stick out like a sore thumb, like losing Eli Tolvanen, for example, who is supposed to be a big part of their team right now and their future moving forward is now finding his game with the Seattle Kraken. So that's just an example, and then some other players that they've missed out on. Tanner Jeannot sticks out to me as a guy who is just not the same as he was last year. This guy was electric. He was in the Calder Trophy conversation, and we've barely heard his name this year when it comes to the Nashville Predators conversation. So I know there's a lot of talk about Ekholm and could he get moved at the deadline? Ottawa is interested. We'll see what happens there. But I'm going to give Nashville a B- because I did expect them to be a lot lower in this division at this point in the season, but they have kind of turned it around. UC Saros really struggled at the beginning of the season. You guys remember that, of course, and he has really turned it around and is just doing everything to help his team win. Also, the backup, Kevin Lankinen, has been decent this year as well for the Predators. But some tough days ahead for this team. We'll see if they can squeak into the playoffs here. It's definitely going to be a bit of an uphill climb. They do have 50 points, so they're only 3 behind Colorado right now, but they're on a heater, and so it's going to be a bit of an uphill climb. But hey, we've been surprised by the Predators before, so right now I'll give them a B-.
3 points this late in the year is tough, and Money Puck's percentages are reflecting that right now. 19% chance for the Preds to make the playoffs as of today. So it could happen, but not likely, and that's a shame if you're a Preds fan.